dopamine is this chemical we release in our brain that makes us feel excited, happy, productive, just high on life, and
Right.
also anytime you release any good chemical in your brain, whether it's serotonin or endorphin, whatever it is, eventually all roads lead to dopamine. There's a series of reactions that occur that kickstart the release of all the other neurotransmitters that eventually lead to the release of dopamine. So every time you're feeling good, you have high dopamine levels in your brain.
Okay.
So for dopamine to give you this good feeling, it has to attach to its receptor. It's like a lock and key situation. It is not just about releasing dopamine, it's about having dopamine attached to its lock. So dopamine is the key and the receptor is the lock. And once the attachment occurs, you open up that amazing feeling in your brain. You have energy. Yeah.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those guests watching us from around the world, saying, where is Prince George in British Columbia? Everybody knows where Vancouver is. We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver. And that puts us exactly in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west, and a beautiful, beautiful province. Anybody that plans to go to British Columbia, go north and watch us here in the north. The beautiful, beautiful place. So today, a very, very special guest. Her name is Dr. Sarah Zaldivar. And she has an amazing, amazing background. And I'm going to look at her credentials here. She is a doctorate, holds a PhD in exercise psychology and nutrition from the University of Miami. She's a licensed dietitian, certified personal trainer, American College Sport Medicine, and a rapper, and so many more things. And Sarah, can I call you Sarah, Dr. Sarah?
Please do. Please do. Just call me Sarah.
Okay, welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Let me just one thing. My PhD is in exercise physiology, not psychology. So it's like the science of movement, exercise physiology, and the supporting field is in nutrition and dietetics. Because before that, I had a master's in nutrition and dietetics and a bachelor's and a licensed dietitian, and all the good stuff. But yeah, nothing that I do though that I preach has anything to do with my academic credentials because we were basically taught all the wrong things.
Right. So amazing credentials, though. Now, where are you located? You're in Florida, but
Yeah.
what
So
location?
I grew up in Lebanon in the Middle East, and then
Okay.
I did my bachelor's, my master's, and became a licensed dietitian all the way, all in Lebanon. And when I was 25 years old, I finished all of that, and I hopped on a one-way ticket in Miami, and I got my doctorate at the University of Miami. And then, so I lived like a decade in Miami, and then after the pandemic, we just moved to Ocala, which is like Central Florida, right next to Orlando, and we bought a house here. And since I can work everything online, I coach clients online, I teach at Miami Dade online, I do YouTube online. I mean, there was no strong reason to stay in Miami.
No, and then the other part about Miami is extremely expensive, I presume.
Just buying like a nice regular good house like this one we would have easily spent, like, I'm not even exaggerating, 700K.
Yeah,
700K just
yeah.
for that. So it's like a third of the price if you buy it here, which is where we did in Ocala. I had never heard of Ocala. I was so scared because I've always been a city girl, like in Lebanon, always been in the city, and then Miami. And I was like, what? Where are we going? I was so terrified, but we love it. There's no like the traffic, you don't fear for your life every time you get in your car. It's
Right.
peaceful, it's quiet. And I'm constantly busy anyway. So that's my preference, is to have a really nice home, a big home that you're comfortable and happy in, and so it was a
Yeah.
good decision.
Yeah, and now, and the other part that is the amazing part that I found is that, and as you already indicated, I'm 83, being 80, 83 and a half, I guess, being 84, November the
I love it.
1st. As, it's that nearly 84 years young, I call it. I show you my
Yes.
picture. Just I'm writing books as well, and so have
And just
you.
your energy. I was in shock. That's amazing.
This
Wow, I
book,
love it. Living
this book
young.
comes
Yes.
out in August, and
Oh,
it's all about. I've written this is the fourth one, and I'll show you the other ones later. But this is the book that deals with fitness, wealth, and health and fitness. And yeah. So the
what would you ascribe your energy and just drive and all everything? Would you ascribe it to it at this age?
I've always been like that, Sarah. And for me, it's my foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic. Avoid the negative, and actually have a sign here. I'll tell you a little bit more about the sign, but it's 2547. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But underneath it says attitude. I avoid the negative. No matter how tough today is, I know tomorrow is going to be a good day. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 150%. And then work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. A lot of people say, you're lucky. I said, no, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's how it
That
works.
is so true. I hate the word luck. I hate it
Me
with a
too.
passion. Oh my gosh, there's no such thing as luck. Yeah, like I hate the whole concept of luck.
And then the other part with me is that I'm a bit of a late bloomer, and it took me till I was, in 1997. I was already 57 years old, 58 years old at that point, nearly. Is that I walked into, I was not very successful academically. I failed grade 3, I failed grade 7 3 times. And then he said, what
Yeah.
are we going to do with this guy? Maybe send him to the mentally challenged school. Or my parents were beautiful people. They said, no, we're not going to do it. Let's get him a career or a job or in a profession. So my dad was doing lumber. My grandfather was a master carpenter. They sent me to a furniture factory, and I became a furniture maker. And
Love
and
it.
and now young people among each other are hard on each other. All the friends that I had that were in school with me in grade 7, went to college and then university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then that was hard. And
Right.
but it took me till I was nearly 57, 58 years old. Walked into a store, picked up a book here in Prince George, actually, and the book. I opened the book, and it was a book written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was about driven to distraction. And I said, "What is this?" And the more I looked at it, it was about. I'd never even heard about it. ADHD. I'm ADHD. That's another reason that I can do all
Yeah.
the things that I'm doing. So I call it a superpower. And, I wrote a book about that as well. I'll show you the details on that later. ADHD
Wow.
Unlocked. So,
I love it.
so the energy is a combination of all of that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then I love every day. I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late, and I always make my bed. And and then
I wish
whatever
I
day.
thought I was late. My hubby would be so much happier. I never think I'm late. I think I have all the time in the world for everything. That you
Yeah,
need to teach me.
yeah.
But yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing now. Let's talk about I find you so amazingly interesting. Is that what brought you in is to Lebanon, and
Yeah.
that was a troubled place. Middle East has
Still
challenges,
is.
obviously, as you well
Yeah.
know, and have had forever that I know. And so, what brought you to Lebanon?
I've always been very, very driven and ambitious from a very young age. I remember telling my mom as a teenager, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that." And like, I always wanted to do all the things. And what ended, I mean, I think on top of the drive and the ambition, because I think of the way that I was raised. I was reading this article the other day about like traits that people have when they feel like they didn't receive enough love as children, which obviously, like if people know my story, I've mentioned this here and there. Like I never really was given. I mean, my parents never once told me I love you. Imagine that,
Ooh,
never, until
so
one time I
important.
mentioned it. Yeah, and then they realized it, but I was already like 25, 26, and then it doesn't really you think it doesn't feel the same way. So I think that was a major driving force maybe in me trying to be an overachiever and trying to do all the things so that I would feel like I'm worthy of love,
Right, right.
or significance, or things like that. And I think that's maybe like the biggest driving force now that I try and understand why I have all this drive to this day, and it keeps getting stronger and stronger.
Right,
So I think that's kind of like what pushed me to always try and do and be the best. And then at some point, you do your bachelor's and you do your master's, and at some point, there's nowhere to go in Lebanon unless you're gonna get a 9 to 5. And or what most Lebanese people do, they will go to, let's say, Dubai or places like in the Middle East that
right.
can pay you a relatively better, maybe 4 or 5K a month, whereas in Lebanon, maybe 1K, maybe 2K, that's with pulling strings. And I was always a very fiercely independent, strong woman, and I've always had a very strong sense of indignation. I cannot tolerate inequality and I cannot tolerate misogyny. And I just cannot see myself in an Arabic country like Dubai, even though people like to make it out to be, and I'm sure it's great. I'm sure there are people there that are very, happy there. I just know that I wouldn't be happy living there. I remember everybody's like, "No, it's open. It's like it's different. You should, trying to like tell me to go and get a job there." And I would see some of my friends like taking a picture at a mall, right? And they'll say like when the sign on the mall, because in Arabic, which is my native, Lebanon, Dubai, we all speak Arabic as our native, and it says on the mall like in Arabic, it would say that you have to wear conservative clothing. Like, what does that mean? That's directed at women,
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
us what we can and cannot wear. And I'm like,
yeah.
over my, I'd rather be skinned alive than be told what I can and cannot wear, or what I can or cannot say. And it's the same thing that I've always had, even with jobs. That's why I could never be an employee, because I'm allergic to authority. you know?
Yeah,
So I think yeah, there you go. That's where it all comes from, I guess.
yeah. And so then healthy living to you is very important, and then obviously diet is very very important,
Yeah.
and particularly the different directions. And I think the reference that you made is that the way things are being taught, you did not agree to that necessarily, and you had your own direction, which you still follow very carefully now.
Yeah. I don't know how they still let me teach at Miami Dade College, teaching everybody about the carnivore diet, because we're supposed to like be teaching them about the academy, of nutrition and dietetics and what they're putting out. That's why that's the only job that I've been able to hold down, because I have zero supervision.
Right.
So yeah, it was hard for me to finally understand that humans are carnivores and we're supposed to eat our species specific diet, which is an all meat diet. It was very difficult for me because of my background, because I'm a classically trained slash brainwashed dietitian. When you go through traditional academia, you just are taught by authority that, this is what the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics puts out, and everything else is a fad diet. So, as dietitians, it takes us a lot longer to accept it, because it means that I have to literally forget about like a decade or more of my life of going through academia, and it's like, what was it all for? It's a very tough pill to swallow. I feel like I wasted my time and energy and money when I could have done much more powerful and impactful things with my life. So, um, yeah, but because I always applied what I was being taught, and I always had a real passion for being healthy and fit, I would just constantly either be on a diet or researching a better way to do things all the time. And
Right.
so, via trial and error, application, failure, learning from failure, I guess is the most important thing. I never tried something new before I had that meeting with myself. Okay, well, what went wrong that last time? I think that's the key. And from there, I realized that, wait a second, where our natural state is ketosis. We're supposed to run on fat as our main energy source. We're not supposed to be dependent on carbohydrates. We never came across carbohydrates for 99.99% of our existence as a species here on Earth. We evolved during an ice age where the climate literally it's not like we evolved in a tropical forest with fruits and veggies. Like,
No.
these things weren't available to us. So our DNA has evolved to thrive under conditions of a carnivore diet. And
Right.
so that's how I eventually discovered it. And by dealing with my own sugar addiction, food addiction, binge eating, acne that I struggled with ever since I was a teenager, anxiety, all those things, they all kept leading me in one direction, the carnivore diet.
So would you say then, Sarah, that diet very much lies on the foundation of all those things, directly, indirectly, that a person consumes? May it be
Yeah,
carnivoric or may it be
yeah.
plant based or whatever people are doing.
Yeah, carnivore diet is the most sober meal plan on the planet. And so, it's funny. I did my dissertation on food addiction, and I still was in denial. I did my whole, like, 4 or 5 years of my life spent literally studying food addiction and sugar addiction. And I
Right.
still went after that period of time. I graduated, then I published a keto dessert cookbook on Amazon. Like, I was so in denial. Um, and I think it's because, even though I knew the studies existed, the studies that compared sugar to cocaine and sugar to heroin, and I knew in rat studies, rats and mice will consistently choose sugar over cocaine and over heroin by a large margin, consistently, every single time they run those studies. I knew that. I think, you know what it is? The heroin studies had not come up yet. When I wrote my dissertation, the literature review, the first part of the dissertation, when I wrote it, the heroin studies had not come out yet, because I wrote it in 2015 and the heroin studies came out in 2017. And for some reason, the cocaine studies didn't hit me the same way until later on. I discovered the heroin studies. I think that's when it finally clicked for me. It's like, okay, like, as long as you keep dabbling in addictive foods, and especially carbs and sugars, you're always going to struggle. And that's when I really completely changed everything, and it really helped me live a sober life and not feel this addiction anymore. That's what it was. So yeah, tell me.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so the carnivore diet is the most sober meal plan in the world, because there's no carbohydrates, there's no sugar in it, and so you're not constantly battling this drug that people are eating every single day. Whereas, even if you do keto, you're still struggling because you're still consuming keto desserts and keto treats, and so you're still literally eating foods that are far more addictive than heroin. And people will say, well, the rat studies show that sugar is more addictive than heroin, but we're not rats. There is not one single addictive substance on the planet that has been shown to be addictive in rodent models that hasn't also translated to be addictive in humans. And I could just look at the brain scans of overweight and obese people, and their brains look exactly like those of heroin addicts, cocaine addicts, and alcoholics. Exactly the same destruction of the dopamine in their brain centers. And there's a correlation between how much body fat you have on you and how much destruction of the dopamine centers in your brain. The more weight you have on you, the less dopamine you have, the less dopamine activity you have in your brain. So if that doesn't tell me, also, it's not just correlation. I can even say that that's a direct cause. If, the more body fat you have on you, you have less dopamine activity in your brain, similar to other addicts. What does that tell us?
So I just want to make sure they got this right. So they said the more fat you have, the more dopamine you have. So how are
Yeah,
those
the
two
less dopamine.
for the layperson that I know fat are being heavy or something, But how does that relate to that?
Great question. So, dopamine is this chemical we release in our brain that makes us feel excited, happy, productive, just high on life, And
Right.
also, anytime you release any good chemical in your brain, whether it's serotonin or endorphin, whatever it is, eventually all roads lead to dopamine. There's a series of reactions that occur that kickstart the release of all the other neurotransmitters that eventually lead to the release of dopamine. Every time you're feeling good, you have high dopamine levels in your brain.
Okay.
So, for dopamine to give you this good feeling, it has to attach to its receptor. It's like a lock and key situation. It is not just about releasing dopamine, it's about having dopamine attached to its lock. So dopamine is the key and the receptor is the lock. And once the attachment occurs, you open up that amazing feeling in your brain. You have energy. Yeah.
All the time or just at a particular moment? Is saying, you know something, I feel really, really good today, better than yesterday, so I'm locked with that
All the time.
dopamine.
The
But
tons and
all,
tons of dopamine molecules at every millisecond, all the time, this is happening in your brain.
so you stay then connected like
Stay
that.
connected. Yeah. So it's like dopamine gets released, it attaches to its receptor, then it gets taken back and it gets recycled, and another molecule gets released. And it's
Okay.
like a bunch, but this is happening really fast in a very large volume. Like it's happening really fast, and a lot of it is happening all the time.
So if I look at you, you're a very excited individual. You're very go, go, go. So you must be locked in all the time, right?
I'm releasing tons and tons of dopamine, and
Yeah.
they're unlocking tons and tons of the receptors all the
Yeah.
time, being recycled fast, and more is being released. And it's like a lot of that
Right.
activity is happening all the time in my brain. Like I'm high on life.
Now I'm the same as you. I'm high on life too because, as you already noticed, I'm excited about that's why I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I think I'm late. I'm in a hurry, and I said well, maybe I should do this first. No, I can't. I have to go to blah blah blah. So and then whatever I do, I'm a good speaker. I do lots of other stuff, but I usually have lots of excitement. And people, actually, my wife says, we have a place in Victoria, that is south of here by the ocean. So I go there every weekend. So I leave here Friday afternoons, come back here, on Monday mornings. And she said during the week, there we both of us got we don't, but for all intents and purposes, she said when John is here with his ADHD, we all have ADHD, including our three dogs, because John is a go 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 individual. So at the same time, though, I'm trying to connect it to diet and understanding it. She is vegan. I call myself 80/20. What does that mean to me is that she doesn't do red meat. I don't do much of that either by association. And then the other thing, we're very
Your
conscientious.
wife, you mean your wife is vegan?
Yes.
Okay.
And I call myself 80/20 vegan.
Okay.
And then, so I do eggs, I do chicken, I do fish, but not
Yeah.
necessarily red meat. And then I'm
Yeah.
very conscientious, and so you see, of sugar. Sugar is bad, bad, bad. So I try to avoid it. I have a bit of a sweet tongue, but I'm very good at walking away from it. We don't really have sugar in the house, and I don't have it when I'm up north here either. So I'm very conscientious of my diet.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, tell me.
so how do I connect to you? I look at you. You're lively and full of life. So am I. So what is the difference between you and me, other than the obvious? Obviously, I'm a male. You're female. But the uh, so am I in your mind? I avoid. The other thing that I don't do, I try not to eat processed food. So if I go to a
Yeah.
grocery store, I usually walk around the outside, not in the
Yeah.
middle alleys, because most of that is processed. I don't know what they put in it.
Yeah, I think that's another major win for you because, and here's the thing, most people are eating like a standard American diet or a Western type diet that's full of processed foods that have all kinds of chemicals, additives, colorings, all of those things, which have catastrophic effects on our both physical and mental health and the rate of our aging. Just the fact that you're not doing that, that's fantastic. You're above and beyond 99% of the population. Now, here's the thing about plants. Um, I have to talk about plant self-defense chemicals in a second, but first let me mention why everybody's so confused. It's because 99% of nutrition studies, if not all of them, pit two groups of people against one another. Let's get the people that are eating a normal standard American westernized diet and let's compare them to a plant-based diet, which is fresh, whole foods, people who are actively concerned about their health and so they're working out, they're not smoking, they're taking their vitamins, they have a healthy life, high socioeconomic status, all that kind of stuff. Those people always end up being healthier than the people that are on the Western diet that are probably also smoking or drinking alcohol or do all kinds of stuff. They just don't really care this much. And this is like almost all nutrition studies out there because they're epidemiological, which it's not really a very high quality type of study where you get a person and you give them an intervention and then you follow them in real time to see what happened. Most nutrition studies are not like that. Most nutrition studies, unfortunately, are epidemiological or correlational in nature, where it's like you bring two groups of people, you give them questionnaires, and you ask them in general, how often do you eat, this kind of food or that kind of food, and that is a very poor form of study. But worse than that is the fact that they're literally pitting people who just don't care and eat whatever versus the people who are trying to eat what we're told is a healthy diet, which is a plant-based diet that has no red meat. And so this is why you get those headlines, red meat causes cancer, or be careful, red meat is a carcinogen. It's because the meat eaters are the people on a standard American diet. They're eating meat on like in a burger or on a pizza. Nobody has bothered to enter that third arm where it's like the real carnivores, the people that are eating what we ate, the nothing but the meat, all kinds of meat. When I say meat, I'm not just meaning red meat. I'm talking about all kinds of meat, animal foods, basically. Nobody bothers to do that. And that's because the vast majority of nutrition studies are funded by the food industry. We have $1 trillion food industry here in the United States. And the reason why they can make so much money and have so much money left over to fund nutrition studies is because they're using very cheap drugs and calling them foods, and it's mainly in the form of carbohydrate. And so they have zero interest in entering a third arm and funding a study that's looking at carnivores, real carnivores, and looking at what those outcomes are going to be. Because if it ends up being that the people that are eating nothing but meat are doing the best out of everybody, how is that going to raise the income of that business that funded that study, right? There's a reason why Coca-Cola spends 11 times more money to fund basic nutritional research than our government or the NIH. Why would
Scary,
Coca-Cola
right?
fund nutrition studies? What?
Scary.
It is. And that's just
Yeah,
Coca-Cola,
yeah,
right? And now you have
yeah.
all the other food, they have no interest in doing that. There's no strong financial incentive because when people start eating meat, they get cured of addiction. So they're no longer hooked on a product. They're not going to overconsume calories.
And that's not only in the United States, the same applies to Canada and likely to Europe, right? Really,
1000%.
Yeah.
1000%. The problem in the United States is that any effort at regulating these drug foods gets shut down very, very quickly by our politicians.
Outlobbied.
Because I mean, who's funding the campaigns of these politicians? The good thing is like we have a political what's Kennedy, Robert Kennedy,
Yeah. He just
person that is
announced
really
his
saying it like it is when
running
it
mate
comes to what
yesterday.
he would plan to do for
Yeah.
for the food industry. But we'll see if he gets, because he goes against the grain in so many areas, so we'll see if he gets a chance at being elected. But that's like the only politician that I've heard that has this kind of courage to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I
He's
think you're
Robert
frozen.
Kennedy Jr., and
Yes.
he just announced his running mate yesterday, I believe. the key is, will he be able to withstand the pressure from the status quo, because they will call him a spoiler, so that the third party that potentially brings Trump back in again, the
Yeah. Oh my
Democrats
gosh.
will, yeah, that's another scary thing. Anyway, that's
Don't
politics. But
don't don't tell
so
me. Yeah.
the
I don't
point that
care.
I'm
You know
the
me. I talk about anything, and I don't give an F about nothing. I don't
and
care.
and and me as nearly 84, I do the same as you do.
Right.
I've done it all. I've seen it all, and and
Right.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
very blunt about it.
Yeah.
Not
I'm
careless,
never
but
gonna
very
apologize
thoughtful.
for not. I'm never gonna apologize for not supporting somebody so ugly internally
Right,
and externally.
right,
Like that energy, that vibes that he emits is pure poison. I don't
right,
care what else. Like it's like I don't care what he might do for the economy. What's more important? Do we want to create a world that's vibrating at a higher, positive, loving, supportive energy? Or do we want to put poison there that's going to poison everything? I think that's far more important, because once that is locked in, everything else follows. The economy, everything else follows. It's about happiness. That's for
right.
me my driving force.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I interrupt you a little bit there. So the same
You got me
applies to.
riled up with politics.
Yeah. So the keys that I see, Sarah, is that that the people that push certain products, and on the medical side is the same in terms of pills and all the other kind of things. There is so much money in it that, and then the system. I love the democratic system, although it has flaws, and one of them is the funding of stakeholder groups that vote for the people that end up in the Senate and
Yeah.
in the Congress, and then all of a sudden those are high-paying jobs, and they were staying
True.
in the jobs, and they, rather than doing what is best for everybody, we are so fortunate here. I fly around a lot, and through North America, and have a number of businesses. We do business in the United States as well as in Canada. I fly around, and I always sit by the window, and I look outside, and it says paradise. It is paradise. We cannot get it any more luckier than where we are. And then I see the democratic system. Sure, it has flaws, but I see now in the United States, and in particular, is with the elections, is saying, where do we want to go? We want to go to a dictatorship. I was in a dictatorship. I was born in Holland in 1940, and we were
Wow.
liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. It devastated the country, where my parents were married in 1938, and they had a boy first, and then a girl, my brother, my sister, and then me. And they were happy, and then all of a sudden everything changed, because a dictator called Adolf Hitler took over Europe,
Yes.
and for the next 5 years it was devastating. My dad was called into the army, and the last we heard of him, he was in the bombing of Rotterdam, and he didn't know if he was dead or alive. But I still remember, as little kids, from the time I was 3.5, 4 years old, hundreds of bombers in the air bombing Germany by the Allied forces to force them
Right.
into capitulating. And then at the same time, as kids, we used to go every morning. We would get up as gunny sacks, and we would go into the railroad yards, find anything edible or burnable. And the winter of 1944-45 was called the hunger winter. Lots of young kids died, and older people that were vulnerable died because of lack of food and cold. I still remember, even now, nearly 80 years later, I can still feel the hunger, that we had then, barely surviving, and the cold, and then the anxiety of fear of losing that parent, and where the people in our neighborhood got dragged away and sent to work camps or concentration camps in Germany, never came back. And people that at the end of the war were shot right in front of our house, and all those kind of things. I know dictatorships, and if
Yeah.
those that are contemplating elections Yes, the democratic system has flaws. There's no question about it, but it's better than the alternative. All you have to look at, you could look at Ukraine. You know it
Yeah.
so well. The Middle East, and then for me, I grew up
Yeah.
doing the, with the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. And if you want something like that, or Putin, or
Yeah.
Kim in Korea,
Right.
or Iran, or all those
Right.
kind of places, how
Right.
lucky, and the point that I'm making, we are so fortunate where we are. And to hear these people bitching and complaining
Right.
about,
Right.
say, you don't want to try the alternative. I've been
No.
there. I know what it does.
Oh
It is
yeah.
not so that once the war is over, everything is back to normal. It simply
Mhm.
isn't. It may take a generation. It may two. But I still
Yeah.
today have PTSD. I was affected by the inner child, at the fear of losing that one parent that was the only one that was protecting us.
Right.
That was very emotional and all the other
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I've been there, it troubles me when I hear people talking about, oh, maybe we'll get a dictator, and then maybe then things will be better. No, they won't. you know.
Right. Right, right. Well, people who deny the results of a free election, I mean, is this really the kind of person that you would want? The person, like Trump will literally praise other dictators. Like he likes their strength. He's so insecure. What I wonder why. That, he can he finds strength in the most toxic places and he praises that. No matter what, like if he's like putting on a show or whatever, people like to make excuses for him. Why would you ever want to align yourself with that? Why would you ever want your brand to be aligned with that?
The, the,
It's a whole thing.
the thing that I'm saying about it, Sarah, is that I have to be careful. I will not criticize the U.S. system, but what I can do is saying
Yeah.
that having grown up in a dictatorship in
Yeah.
Europe and seeing the result of it, still feeling it today,
Yeah.
that the rest of the world is looking at the United States, that is you and the United States around you, that are
Yeah.
relying on them being the leaders of the free world.
Yeah.
That potentially is in jeopardy. That's all I'm
It
saying.
is in
Not in
jeopardy.
terms of the Americans have to
1000%.
decide who they will elect, but before you do, is that realize that if you're electing to go to dictatorship, look at the examples. Look at Hitler. I was
Yes.
there. And then look
Yeah.
at North Korea. Look at Iran. Look at China. Look at Venezuela. Look at Cuba, and I can go look at Hungary going in that
Mhm.
direction. And
Oh my
so,
gosh. People forget, that saying that strong times lead to strong men create weak men create hard times. Oh, it's like what it no no. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times create weak men. Something like that. It's that cycle,
yeah.
right?
The other part that, and I think that's a good one. The other part is that I think the fellow's name was Müller or so, before the Second World War. He said that first they came in, the dictators came in, and they took the communists and got rid of them. And I stood by and said nothing because I was not a communist. Then the
Yes.
next thing, they took the Democrats, and I did not say anything because I was not a Democrat. Then they got the gypsies, and I stood by and said nothing because I was not a gypsy. And then they took the Jews, and I stood by and said nothing. And now they're knocking on my door, and there's nobody left to complain.
Thank you. That's why I speak up. What's happening in Gaza, the genocide that's happening, all the things that are not politically correct. Every time I post about it, some people unfollow me, because here in the United States, there's like nobody knows the history. They just it's just like it's almost taboo to talk about it. But if they literally spend 20 minutes just to educate themselves, it would make it's wild for anybody to support and be silent about what's going on, what the Israelis are doing, that Netanyahu is doing to the genocide that he finally wants to finish, right, with the Palestinian people. The reason I speak up because I believe in a higher. I don't know what it is. There's a good energy in the universe, and I always want to be aligned with it. And I think
Right.
when you're connected to your intuition, which comes from raising your baseline dopamine level, which is everything I talk about, when you're connected to your baseline energy, when you raise your baseline dopamine levels, you connect to your intuition, you're aligned with the energy of the universe.
Right.
And I would never ever want to jeopardize disconnecting from that, because it gives me
Right.
even more dopamine and more energy and more fire in me to work harder. And that's the secret of my success. Why would I ever jeopardize that connection?
Now the other part, switching over to something else. Now you're a rapper, and
That, yeah.
I so we kind of looked at the on YouTube. You are good, and
Thank
I think
you.
the I believe the one that I looked is the Queen, or I'm the
Like
Queen.
a queen. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
last year. Yeah. I
So
have, there's a lot. The newest one that I just released is called Does She Know? Last month I released Dancing with Snakes. I really love the newer ones just because, I don't know, maybe because they're newer and they're produced by a really good producer that I started working with. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to be releasing more and more songs every week, every 2 weeks or so. Music videos are coming soon, and I love it, and I keep getting better and better at it.
mainly on YouTube, Sarah,
Yeah, if you
or
go to YouTube,
all the major medias.
all the what?
Where do they find you
Oh,
to
oh, yeah.
on the
If you go to my
YouTube?
YouTube, my name,
Yeah.
Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Sarah with
Okay.
an H, and you scroll all the way down at the homepage of my YouTube main page, all the way down, you will see all of the music videos. Or right now, I don't have a music video. I have visuals and I have lyric videos, but all the songs are there. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, I'll have no, this will come out tomorrow. So yeah, hopefully really, really soon this month we'll start putting out
How
music
did you
videos as well.
get to that and saying, I'm going to be a rapper?
Music, and I've always been a dancer. I've always taken dance classes. I've taught dance classes ever since I was a teenager. I've always
Right.
been a dancer, and I've always listened to music. I've always been a good student, and I remember coming home from school every single day and doing my homework with my radio, and I would listen to the radio. From my earliest memory, I've listened to music every single day of my life for hours on end, and so I've always had a very strong connection to rhythm and
Yeah,
music.
that's what I was going to say. You look to me like you have that feeling. Some people have that natural feeling for rhythm.
Yeah, I believe rhythm is primal too. I mean, if you look at the way that we evolved, we'd be singing and dancing around a bonfire at least
Right.
4 nights a week,
Right.
and up until like throughout the whole night, we would keep that up. So there's something I think very powerful about rhythm. One of the things that I would want to do as a business idea is to have like dance boxes. You know how you have fast food places everywhere and clubs,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever? I'd rather have dance boxes, like places where people can go meet up, and instead of, smoking and drinking and doing all this stuff, no, it's like we'll teach you dance moves, and there's a place where you learn a few dance moves, and then there's a place where you can all dance together and like meet up like that, in a healthier, more primal way of connection, of connecting to one another.
Something very positive, really, right? So,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
No.
I think growing up in Lebanon, again, my parents weren't really there to kind of like, and I don't have any resentment or anything. I think I'm thankful for my past, because I know that that's the reason why I am doing everything, and I feel so successful, and I have all this ambition and drive is because of that. So I understand. I understand what they went through, what they also weren't given, and so, but they never put me in like, like if I were born here, I would have definitely been a performer that's made it big by the time she was like in her 20s. But it's fine, it's okay. Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, I'm not asking you your age, but you're still young, as far as I'm
Oh yeah, well,
concerned.
that's why I'm
Compared,
getting after it. Yeah. Thank you.
so yeah, I'm going to be 120, So that's where I'm going.
Yeah,
That's why I'm going to live like, yeah,
yeah,
I want to be 120. And even now
yeah,
I can run circles, as you already noticed, around a lot of people at
yeah,
nearly 84. I'm
yeah.
writing books. I'm working on the fourth one. I'm podcasting. I love podcasting because there all of a sudden you are sitting in northern Florida, and I'm sitting in Prince George, British Columbia. So we have this amazing discussion between you and me. And then the amazing part about it is that while we doing this, we got tens of thousands of people watching us in this discussion. I know that already, so that once we release it on your network, my network, we will have tens of thousands of people watching, and we will release it actually within 24 hours, we release it. So you'll have it
Nice.
tomorrow morning. But the point that I'm making, I'm also do a lot of keynotes and in-demand public speaker. But
Mm,
every time I have to go do a presentation, it takes me 2 days to get a day to get there, a day to get back, and I love to do that, but it takes too much of my time. This way, I can still do it selectively. I do public speaking, but I love podcasting because
yeah,
it brings tens of thousands of people together around the world. And right now, Podmatch has done a great job for us and matching up the individuals, and I find it amazing. And it's just
yeah.
still at its infancy, in my opinion.
1000%. I think there's an area in the brain called mid-anterior cingulate cortex, or MAC for short. It's right here behind your forehead. It has to do with the bed seat of willpower. And it grows every time you do some hard work, like what you're doing, the podcasting. Even though you like it, you need some discipline to be able to be consistent with it. And every time you deploy that discipline, that area in your brain, the mid anterior cingulate cortex, or the MAC, grows in size. And it seems that people who live the longest have the largest MACs in their brains.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it
You know,
increases the will to live, or it increases lifespan. It's just like the more work, the more hard work you put in, the more you follow your passions, the more you contribute, the greater that size of that MAC in your brain is, and the longer you're gonna live.
So in my case, the as I said to you already, I was born November the 1st, 1940, during the war years, and then the other thing that had an impact on my life, April the 12th, 1945, we were liberated by the Canadian Army in northeastern part of Holland, and they made such an impression on me as a little 5-year-old, 4.5, 5-year-old, that I
Yeah.
knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes in Canada.
Wow.
I was trying to go
That's
when
so beautiful.
I was trying to
Yeah.
go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me then. And then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force. They still
Right.
had drafts then for 2 years, and then I left when I was 23 to
Okay.
Canada. And I had another dream. So my first dream was to go to Canada. Then my second dream was to build my own lumber mill because my dad was involved in lumber. My grandfather was a master carpenter, and then
Yeah.
obviously I was not very successful in school. But at the same time, I knew, although it troubled me in a sense, but I knew deep down I could do just as well as the other guys and girls did.
Mm,
But I had to start anew again, and so
yeah.
it then gave me the incentive to go to Canada, and I wanted to start with nothing. I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I took $150 with me when I left Holland Airport in Amsterdam, flew into Montreal, took the train across Canada because I wanted to build a mill. I couldn't speak English, I didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. When I arrived in Vancouver, I went to the immigration department, and fortunately there was a German guy there, and I could speak some German, so I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George. That's the boom town. That's where they're building lumber mills and plywood plants
Wow.
and pulp mills. And so I came here 60 years ago. It's about 3 blocks away from here is the Greyhound station. Came off the bus and with my suitcase, my 3 books, 2 sets of clothes. I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47.
Wow.
And
That's Wow, I love this story. See, when people tell me like, "Wow, it took so much courage," like you left because I came by myself. I didn't know nobody, and my mom she gave me $2,000 for like first month's rent, and she's like, "After that, you have to figure it out." And then people are like, "Wow, like it takes so much courage to be by yourself and come to Miami," and I'm like, I mean, I don't know. For me, it felt natural. I was just so happy to leave the past behind and the hell that I was living in. And like when I hear a story like yours, like that is commendable. There, you didn't have WhatsApp or Skype or being able to talk to people and FaceTiming them. You had, like that was harsh.
Yeah.
Like that's commendable. Amazing.
But it did, Sarah, no different than it did for you. It laid the foundation that I showed you on this one. Underneath it says attitude, passion, work
Yeah.
ethic. And I've always had that, and I knew that I would be successful. I started off as a cleanup man and then gradually worked my way up. Then the other key was when I walked into the store, picked up this book, Driven to Distraction, and I said, oh my God, this is the reason I'm ADHD. So normal schooling for me didn't work, and so
Yeah. You
and
needed more
then
stimulation, more things to do than just, or you needed to be very interested in what you're doing to learn it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. And then from there, and then there was no question about it that I was going to go someplace and
Yeah.
kept working hard. But it laid the foundation. It gave me the benefit that other people didn't have. And then when I left grade seven, the rest I taught myself in my own way and became very quite successful business wise, and wrote three books. I'm going to send them to you. Actually, I'm going to
I was
sign them.
gonna say, yeah.
Driven to
What
Distraction,
against all odds?
Against
Wow,
all odds is this one.
I
Yeah,
love that.
about all the ups and downs. I'm going to send it to you. The other one that I
Yeah.
did is that uh, I found that so many people, that initially when I saw the book about Driven to Distraction, I was ashamed of it. So I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And then the more I found out about it, going to Google, and so that then I found that at least 8% of the population had the benefit, I call it, of ADHD. But then much later, the more I found out about it, I think it is more like 20%. And then
Mm,
the more I heard about it, the more people are still have difficulty dealing with it somehow, and I became more vocal about it, including in my presentations. Then I felt I had to write a book about it, which I did, obviously. And then the other part is that the book was written by Dr. Halliwell. I had him on my podcast. If you're interested, is You Are My Podcast 232. He was on 203. Very interesting. Dr. Halliwell wrote 18 books, five about distractions, and to have him on my podcast, that he had such an amazing effect on changing my life, really giving me the confidence that I was just as good as everybody else. I was successful. For a long time, I felt like everybody said, "Oh, you're so successful." I didn't feel that way until I
right.
got knew that okay, yeah, I'm as good as everybody else is, so I'm going to be okay. So I was
Yeah.
became a late bloomer, if you wish, So
I love that so much. Sometimes late bloomers are the ones that become the most successful because and I notice that with any new thing that I'm learning, I take my time. We're perfectionists. We want to like we take longer in the initial stages, but then that's because we want to lay down the right foundation. I don't know if
exactly.
that's exactly, but that's something that I feel as well. And I wanted to say something earlier when you said you're going to live 120. Why not live forever? I feel like in this day and age, I was listening. So I lost my pet last week. And it really, like, the way that I deal with that, it's like, how I'm going to fix it. I don't want to be okay with it. I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to get over him. How can I fix it? And so, like for me, so I've been listening to a lot of time travel stuff. I know this is where people are going to think I'm crazy, but there's actually a lot of physics and a lot of science that shows like how we could potentially time travel. But to get there, we probably need centuries of work to advance the technologies, to advance the physics. So to do that. So what that means is we need to be alive for centuries. And
Right.
we know that's much easier to cure aging. We're this close to curing aging. So I
Yeah.
think for me, the number one single most important project that I want to do, as much as I love singing and everything, the reason I think I gravitate towards the performance is because I feel I can make it big a lot faster in that area because I feel like I've got what it takes to really put on a good show and make it big. But like I want to make money doing that because I feel it comes easier for me to do that in that area so that then I can figure out and really cure aging and really see, okay, what help do these scientists need? How much money do they need? Do I need to influence some big names so we can chip in more money so it can cure aging a lot faster? That's the real driving force for me right now. So I was listening yesterday to Dr. Aubrey de Grey. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, yeah. So what I was going to say, I'm excited about that. Obviously, is that I saw a presentation by a doc, a couple of docs down in the states that had done analysis of biopsies of about 100,000 people as to why
Uh-huh.
did they die. Not
Yeah,
a single one of them died because of old age.
right. Well, uh-huh.
Interesting.
Heart disease is not heart disease. It is aging. Cancer is not cancer. It is aging. Alzheimer's is aging.
Yeah,
We the biggest, and that's what I wanted to say of the Dr. Abrita Gray. I was listening to, I mean, I've listened to everything he's put out, and I discovered one that I still had not listened to yesterday. I was so happy that I watched it. I'm forcing all my students. They take nutrition classes with me, and then I make them learn about anti-aging.
so what is Doctor Who? Make sure you give the name
Dr.
right. So yeah,
Aubrey, Aubreyde, Gray, Grey. He's one of the biggest names in the longevity, they like to call it longevity or anti aging
I like him. Yeah,
medicine.
yeah.
He founded Sense Foundation, SENS Foundation, and now he moved on and he founded another foundation. But basically, he kind of speaks everywhere. He's a scientist. That's his focus, and he really helps get the funding for all of these for all of the basic science. And once they've nailed down the basic science in one area of aging, because there are like around 7 to 9 main causes of aging. And so they're doing work on each one of those 7 to 9 areas. Once they got the basic science down, they spin it out into a business, like what do you call it, a startup that then can, take that technology and bring it to people and make money easier. But they work on the harder stuff, the basic science stuff.
Right,
So he was talking about like this is the biggest problem humanity has on our hands, and that's aging. We lose the equivalent of 30 World Trade Centers every single day due to aging. And it's not just like that we're losing 30 World Trade Centers, it's that we're suffering before that. We become frail, we lose our minds with dementia and Alzheimer's, we live in physical and emotional pain. It's worse than just losing the 30 World Trade Centers every single day. And we we feel like this is such a big goal that people just try not to think about it or accept it. No, there's nothing natural, normal, or inevitable about death, especially when you know about the breakthroughs that are happening. Maybe that mentality in the past would have served us to accept death, but now it doesn't serve us anymore because now we truly are this close to curing aging. So
right,
now it's okay to not have to accept it. If anything, we shouldn't, because we are 10 to 12 years away from reaching this point called escape velocity. Escape
right.
velocity is basically if you just stay alive for the next 10 to 12 years, we will have enough medical breakthroughs and treatments available to us that are going to give us just enough time until newer treatments are available to us that will elongate our lives even more and more. So it's the point
That,
at which, if you just stay alive for the next 10 to 12 years,
that's the
you can become
threshold.
immortal. What?
That's the threshold. You get
That's
that over that 10, 12 years, then you to the point
then you
that
can
they have.
choose to become immortal, because
Correct.
then in 10 to 12 years, if you choose to be immortal, that means you could, as long as you're getting the treatments, you'll always have enough treatments that are going to keep you alive for as long as you choose, as long as you
Right.
don't buy a motorcycle, get into an accident.
I'm going to sell my motorcycle.
Please do. My hubby just bought one. It's driving me mad. I thought we were over that, but no, he's still not over it.
And I call it. I've had this big Harley Davidson. Not a good idea. It's my second or third. How do you call it? Old age
Yeah,
point. So I'm going to get rid of it. Actually, I did that.
sell
I
it.
made that decision already. Tell him that I told you to put your foot down and say it's not going to happen. Because I
He
see
doesn't
too many
listen to
people.
me.
We had
My
somebody else
husband
getting
doesn't.
killed the other day. Got run over by
Oh,
a car. Not his fault, but still he's dead, right? So
I email him any new thing I find, any new like catastrophe, accident happen. I email it to him. I'll flood his brain with trauma so that he eventually is like, okay, fine, I'm gonna sell it.
you tell him I talked to John Brink and here is his podcast. I have a motorbike. I'm going to sell it. It's done. It's over. And I do it because my wife wants me to, but I also have the responsibility. I want to stay together with. I want to live forever.
Right?
And to increase the odds, I have to get into a motorbike.
I know, and it's funny. I'll whenever I'm listening to these interviews about anti-aging and stuff, like I'll make sure if there's a particularly good area of it, I'll rewind it and I'll put the volume at high and I'll put him where he is, like as if I'm walking into the kitchen. I'm listening to my thing and I just put it. I want to make sure he listens. So it's like we can live forever, So that he has this
What's his
big
name?
William.
William.
He's actually half German, half Spanish. So
Oh,
his
so
dad
does he speak
is
Deutsch?
he doesn't speak German. No, he was born in Miami.
Okay.
Well, sorry, born born in Rochester, New York, but lived
Okay.
all his life in Miami. He was like maybe 2 months old or whatever when we came to Miami.
Dr. Sarah, this was an amazing podcast. Before we go, I want to give a few words to William. William, I love Sarah. We had an amazing podcast. Promise me one thing: sell the bike, William. Sell the bike, and then, so you had it. Now make somebody else happy with it. It helps Sarah. Sarah, it was a pleasure. I loved our podcast, and it was a privilege to have you on my podcast. Take care. Let's
Thank
stay in touch. I'll send you the books. I'm going to sign them, and I'm very impressed with all the things that you do. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am so happy I got to meet you today. I feel like we have so many things in common,
We do.
and yeah, I want you to live forever.
Me too. And the same applies to you.
Thank you so
Sarah,
much.
take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.